So over the past couple of months, WCT's had two similar requests from different sponsors wishing to conduct ultra-orphan disease trials that I'd like to share. This is how to facilitate cross-border transfer of patients to bring them to treatment for research purposes. In one of these specific cases, the company had a gene therapy product for the treatment of an ultra-orphan disease. Their product was only available in the United States, and furthermore, the nature of the assessments for the illness required expertise existing only at one center in the US. The company wanted to transport the patients to this site in the US, where the therapy would be administered, and then have the patient return to his or her native country. Periodically, the patient would be required to return to the US for specialized assessments, while in their country of origin, the patients would only have administrative and other routine safety assessments performed. Target regions for accessing patients included Latin America, the EU, and possibly within Asia. Now, transporting patients for treatment poses a number of challenges, but it's possible, as has been showcased by the Progeria clinical trial that started in 2007, where 28 children from 16 countries participated in a trial requiring them to travel to Boston every 4 to 6 months to receive treatment. Now, there are lots of considerations with such a campaign, and the obvious is, of course, the financial aspects relating to the cost of travel, the arrangements of necessary visas that must be met for the patients as well as their carers and their next of kin, accommodation costs, etc., as well as the cost of having certified translations services available at the site. There are also the risk-benefit assessments that must be weighed, such as the potential reluctance from the local doctors to enroll patients that will receive treatment outside of their jurisdiction, not to mention the ethical considerations of transferring patients that must be addressed in light of locally existing treatment options. Data transfer requirements, including translation of medicinal records, data protection compliance requirements also need to be considered. And of course, there are the regulatory procedures such as the competent authority submissions and ethics submissions that need to be managed in both countries, including the management of the informed consent to consolidate and incorporate the requirements and comments from all the reviewing authorities in the two countries. Given all the country-specific nuances and the already disproportionate effort and costs needed to launch orphan disease trials, it's further amplified when implementing a cross-border patient transfer strategy. So to assist in reducing the costs and the time involved in initiating such trials, there are various steps that could be recommended, and I'll begin first looking at Europe. There are currently two routes for gaining clinical trial authorizations in Europe: the national submission route, requiring submissions to each individual member state, and the VHP, or centralized route, and this is soon to be replaced with a new directive in October 2018. We would recommend the VHP procedure. This procedure involves a series of stages, beginning first with centralized application for all member states review, and then once approved, followed up with a local or national application to each member state concerned. The benefits of this submission and review of the protocol and technical dossier can be made well in advance of potential investigator and even patient identification. And through the submission route, it can be quickly determined which national member states in Europe are likely to reject the study involving patient transfer to the US, and which countries will be open to the review. It also provides the opportunity to address technical questions at one time at a European level, rather than having to go multiple times back and forth with the individual member states. Once VHP approval is obtained, the application will need to be made to the individual member states, including ethics committees, before the patients can be enrolled into the study. So this option really provides the opportunity for early indication of the agency's sentiments with regards to the trial design prior to incurring country-specific regulatory submission, preparation and translation costs. And more importantly, the opportunity to explore the concept of conditional approval based on the provision of site-specific details at a time when patients are identified. So with this European strategy, it would be worth querying with the authorities as to the acceptability of gaining the research approval for pre-approved, ready-to-go reference sites through a single application made to the authorities via a known centre of excellence, without necessarily submitting all documents for these reference sites at the time of the initial application. And oftentimes, Insurance requirements are not really discussed until much later in the submission preparation stage. However, for these types of studies requiring swift and urgent action, we'd recommend partnering with a global insurance broker and discussing the trial features as early as possible, as it creates another level of complexity. Equally, having access to global translation vendors of very high quality is also key to facilitating a rapid submission and response to agency questions. The same principles apply in Latin America in terms of negotiating conditional approvals where possible. However, unlike in the EU, where it's advisable to reduce your costs by waiting for VHP acceptance before preparing submissions, in Latin America it would be advisable to arrange the protocol and IB translations as early as possible to facilitate the submission and negotiation activities. And as contracting requirements in this region are particularly challenging, even across sites within a given country, it would be advisable to begin working on developing a master contract template tailored for the Latin American region and ensuring that these are also discussed with the US sites in advance. In Asia Pacific region, many centres are affiliated with US centres, and therefore there might be an opportunity to negate the need for additional IRB or ethics approval. But more importantly, having FDA endorsement in the context of a pre-IND meeting and having agreed on the protocol design and the clinical development plan significantly increases the chances of having a favorable regulatory assessment. Asian countries, for example, as India, Israel, and even Japan, due to their increased collaboration with the PMDA and the FDA, really do weigh the contributions from the FDA and certainly from the EMA scientific advice. Rare disorders often present unique public health challenges. Clinical development of orphan drugs and drugs that address ultra-rare diseases entail big difficulties. And the previous slides portrayed a fragmented regulatory framework. Therefore, strategic regulatory affairs planning is key not only to minimize the timelines and enabling cross-border transfer of patients, but also to ensure successful execution of the clinical campaign. Strategic planning can help to organize a meaningful pre-IND scientific advice meeting and set the foundations with the agencies on the clinical development plan. It can help to identify early in the process differences in the regulatory requirements and to select countries based, of course, on the prevalence of the rare disease, but also on the pragmatic and operational capabilities. Once potential patients are identified, rapid response and reactivity are crucial to avoid protracted review and approval timelines. And finally, as with any clinical development exercise, keeping the end of the accelerated NDA is crucial, especially in the case of unmet medical diseases and underrepresented patient groups. Together with a team of cross-functional experts from medical and scientific affairs and biostats, medical writing and others, truly global regulatory experts who can leverage their knowledge of different country regulatory pathways to navigate the regulatory hurdles can add significant value in successfully managing the complexities of rare or ultra-rare studies. Thank you.